What's up, Vortex Nation? Eric has finally found a good resting place on the table here for his famous Amos cookies, which he won't stop talking about. Also, he's 4 servings deep today, and it's only about 11:56 in the a.m.
And we are seeking a sponsorship from Famous Amos, just to be clear. This is not subtle.
Just to be clear. We have with us here, unfortunately, Mark is out, but we're going to be talking about firearms, and likely AR-15s. So, he's probably good. He's out hunting currently, but he will be back at some point in time. With me here, Jimmy on the mic currently. I'm joined by Eric, frequent guest, and Jameson, who's been on before. But Jamo, it's been a while.
Long time.
Yeah.
I think that was the first episode I was on.
Yeah. You were on the very first episode, and then kind of 75 or whatever many episodes went by, and then you decided to jump on again.
Yeah, you decided to invite me back. It's good to be back.
Yep.
The topic that we wanted to talk about, to discuss, was video games and firearm culture, guns today. And as soon as that topic came up, Jameson jumped in very excitedly. The in-house nerd. We have a lot of experts here around the office in many different things, and even when it ventures into, being a nerd and playing video games a lot.
That's me.
We've got Jamo.
Mm-hmm.
Jamo, you play a lot of video games, and you have in the past. You also build computers and stuff. What's that all about?
Yeah. Built my first computer in high school, and just kept doing it ever since, and use it for video editing, playing video games mainly. And lots of other stuff.
What's your favorite all-time video game?
Halo 2.
Halo
Going back
2?
to my high school days. That was one of a kind.
I remember a bunch of kids playing Halo 2 and stuff at sleepovers.
That was when Xbox Live first really launched, and the idea of playing online was new, and it was incredible.
With a bunch of other people,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
from that you weren't even in the same room as.
Right.
I remember when
more
that first
split
came out,
screen.
I was kind of weirded out by it. I was freaked out.
Yeah, it was weird.
I didn't know what to think.
Mm-hmm.
Until that point in time, I'd only played video games with my buddy and my best friend from down the street. He'd just come over and we'd play video games basically all day.
You'd have to tell him to stop looking at your screen.
Yep.
Screen peeking.
Don't screen peek.
Yeah. He'd be like, I know you screen peeked.
So,
No, I didn't.
if you're listening and you haven't picked up yet, too, that everybody in this room is a millennial, oh, man, the dark, scary millennials. That is the case right now. So all of us are growing up in a very similar time of video game culture. And really, though, people that are older than us, too, and, people that are older and younger than us have all played video games. My dad is 70 years old. He's played video games. He used to play them all the time back with my brothers. My brothers are all children of the Super Nintendo, the SNES, the regular Nintendo, Atari.
2600.
The Sega, Genesis.
Yep.
They're children of that era. My first console was an N64,
Mm-hmm.
followed by then a GameCube.
Yep.
That
I had
was
older
good stuff.
brother, so we were Nintendo and Super
So you
Nintendo.
started out. You
Mhm.
started out in some of the older school stuff.
Yep.
What were you rocking, Rick?
PS1 was my first.
Oh, PS1.
Yeah.
Did you have the screen that flipped up on the
I
console?
did. Yep. And then
So you could play on the road.
Yep. That was
Which was
incredible.
kind of. Did you ever actually use it that
no,
way?
never use it
Right.
that way.
Because how many times do you have all the plugins and everything to
Never.
run one of those things on the road?
Yep. We did get a Chevy Astro van in 1990 something, and I was super excited that we were maybe going to put a TV in this thing, and I'd be able to watch or play Army Men was the game specifically.
That was a good one.
Great game.
Mhm.
You're playing as the green plastic
Yep.
army men, but they're
Against
alive,
the
right?
yellow plastic Army Men.
Yeah.
Yep. It was incredible.
So that was your favorite game. So is that your all-time favorite game, or what is your...
It'd be a toss-up between that and, we talked about a little bit, Medal of Honor Rising Sun.
Okay, because that's what I was going to say. Medal of Honor Rising Sun was one of my favorite games of all time, as was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yep.
Mhm.
I played that.
Yep.
I played that so much. It was bad.
Oh, yeah.
No homework. Come home from school, immediately jumped on what was that? A PlayStation 3, PlayStation Live, or what do they call it?
PlayStation Network.
Yeah.
PlayStation Network. Yeah, you jump on there, join a party with all your friends, and then you just go play
Yep.
all day.
Yep.
But all of us enjoyed, as well as many other people, some of our favorite games involved firearms.
Yep.
And now here we are today, and all three of us work for a company that is in the firearms and related accessories industry. And so I thought it'd be kind of a fun conversation to chat about how that's impacted us, our thoughts on firearms from, being kids just playing video games and stuff to now being grown-ups who actually own different firearms of all different kinds for hunting and shooting. And then also kind of what it's done to society as well. What do you think, I'm trying to decide what it's like the good news or the bad news. What do you think, the good things or the bad things that it's done? People like to point out the bad things that it's done. That's what they always want to talk about first, because everybody's, oh man, all these kids, they just mindlessly go on video games and they, just zombie out in front of the TV and just shoot a bunch of other people that are all video game people all day.
Yep.
And, they're not getting any exercise. They're getting violent tendencies in their minds and stuff like that. They enjoy the thought of, drawing blood.
Yep. Killing,
all that stuff. In many ways, I get where they're coming from, because it is kind of weird. But also, all three of us played those games, and I don't see any of us walking around wanting to kill anybody. I can say for one thing, so playing Medal of Honor Rising Sun, that was for those not familiar, that was a World War II era video game. The World War II ones were actually some of my favorites until Call of Duty Modern Warfare came out. Because I always thought that the historical aspect of them, and I know, I'm sure that there were things that were historically inaccurate about those video games. Just like when you watch a movie, there's things that are historically inaccurate all the time. But getting some of those different firearms and playing through this this sort of created scenario of a time in history. I actually remember that when I was playing those games, I'd be in 6th grade history class.
Yep.
And the Battle of Midway would come up as a subject, or Pearl Harbor would come up as a subject, and I'd be like, I played that in Medal of Honor Rising Sun, Yep. It was or we'd start discussing, planes of World War II, or firearms of World War II, or some of the gear that they used, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's the M2 grenade," or whatever. That's the M1 Garand.
Yep.
I gained my love for the M1 Garand by playing Medal of Honor Rising Sun, because the game got the pating. They got it.
Yep.
They got it right.
Yeah.
But all that stuff was super cool, and then you're going on all these levels that are, quote, around the world or whatever, and it just for that reason, I remember that there was the history to it that was unique and interesting. And now, I know I watched World War II movies with my dad and stuff, and there would be the firearms they were using, but usually those weren't the focus of the movie or the film, right? The focus of the film or the movie usually had a story about a person or whatever, and then the guns were kind of in the background. But now, had I not played all those games where I'd purposely seek out the M1 Garand, or I'd purposely seek out some other Japanese Arisaka, whatever, I never would have had an appreciation for those rifles now that I saw them. I'd be like, wow, that's really cool. I guess it's like a historical timepiece or whatever. But now it's the second I pick up an M1 Garand, I'm like, I want to empty the clip, which it is a clip in that.
Yep.
I want to empty it so I can hear that pating, which I did. I got the chance to do with our friend Nick, who came up and joined us for those World War II guns podcast. But what are your guys' thoughts on that? What other stuff do you guys think has sort of come out of that now? Being in the industry we're in now, and having played all these games.
Well, I think one thing for me is I didn't have a shooting background at all before coming here. So my shooting background was video games. And to come now and actually shoot some of these firearms and use some of these optics and things like that and be like, oh, man, I've seen this before. I shot this in Call of Duty, or I shot it in Battlefield before. It's really cool to see that. And now working for, obviously, Vortex, I start looking for our optics in any video game that I'm using. And so PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has the Spitfire 3X. Escape from Tarkov, this hardcore simulator, has our UH-1. And there's a few other ones out there. So just being able to see those in the actual games is super cool. And then to be like, oh, yeah, I know a lot more about this. And then the historical aspect is also really cool for me, too.
Yeah.
But I think you nailed that one.
Yeah. And even like we talked a little bit on that 10-minute talk about like how it's not only like even the shooting games, but like there's hunting video games.
Yeah,
there's,
the big game hunters of
yeah.
the world. That's how you got your 270.
Exactly. Yep.
So yeah, if you missed that 10-minute talk,
Yep.
Rick here got his 270 M77 Ruger Hawkeye or whatever. From you got the basically you were a product of some good marketing,
Yes.
and some consumerism there, because you read a magazine that had an ad in it for the Ruger M77, and then you played a video game where the 270 was rated as the best,
like furthest effective range, best accuracy, like minimal recoil, like whatever. That sold me at 10 years old. But yeah.
So how did that minimal recoil thing work out when you were a 12-year-old with a 270?
Didn't work. I remember the first time to Trent's comment.
Trent commented, he said hashtag RIP shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time I shot that, I was I think 11 years old or 12 years old. I was sitting in a chair that had wheels on it. We were at like the local gun range. And just like now, I had my feet like on the chair, not like on the ground. So I'm like sitting there like this, little like, 80-pound 12-year-old, shoot, and just like went scooting back in the chair. But yeah, I mean, like to bring that all back, like it's like guns in video games can create an awareness about them, even for people like at the time I had never owned a gun. I'm 10 years old, but I knew that's what I wanted someday. Just like to your point, like it built that like thinking in your mind that when you did want to buy something, you kind of knew what you wanted. So yeah, I think it's interesting what it does to people. Like gets them aware of something without ever actually putting their hands on it. That's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've found some similar things or parallels to the old racing games too. Like, my other favorite, I guess, everybody always is like, well, my other favorite, my third favorite, my fourth favorite, but the game that split time with Medal of Honor was Need for Speed Underground. And one of the other things that I always enjoyed about both those automotive racing games, especially the Underground ones, and then the games that I enjoyed most related to firearms, especially like the Call of Duty Modern Warfares and stuff, was the customization aspect, and the idea that, a racing game is supposed to be about driving around and racing, right? And a World War II or a Modern Warfare game is supposed to be around, about going around and eliminating the enemy or whatever. But they understood that to kids playing those games, the tools that people are using are really cool, right? And so when you're playing Modern Warfare 2 and you're customizing your loadout, you're getting the AK-47 or whatever, you're choosing your rifle, you're getting the M16A1, you're getting all that stuff, and you're putting on the different optics on it, which of course then magically there's like that little sidebar over there that says like how accurate it is, and all of a sudden it's
plus
like
3.
Yeah, exactly. +3 or whatever. You put the suppressor on there because now my position won't be released on the map when I shoot somebody or something. And then you're getting noob tubes, grenade launchers, you're getting all that stuff. Like they put a lot of focus on the actual tools, just like in those racing games. It was like, I had racing games where it was just you took the cars that came essentially from the factory. They didn't allow you to customize it or anything. Stock as is. Those didn't last more than, I don't know, one evening with me because I just got bored of it.
Right.
The underground games were the best because you could go in, you could put the whole underbody effects, you could put the neon kits, you could put the spoilers, you could tint the windows because everybody knows that makes your car faster.
Yeah.
You put the hood scoops on, adds like
Decals.
30 horsepower. I mean,
Yep.
stuff like that. And even though, in reality, a lot of the things that the games did, they would kind of make up attributes or specs that these accessories would add on and stuff like that. And a lot of it wasn't really that realistic. Like I remember in the games, it's like you'd put a suppressor on it would instantly like dock the range of your gun. Like randomly. It was just kind of like, oh, I guess I have a suppressor on so I can't shoot as far. Or stuff like that would happen. And so I know that there's a lot of kids out there probably who have zero experience with real firearms, but they have a bunch of, they've prestiged 12 times or whatever in Call of Duty, and so they think that they know everything about guns, and they come out and they're like, oh, you have a suppressor on that's going to decrease the range, right? Or like, oh, you put a really high mag scope on so it's really accurate. It's like, well, no, you're just using everything for video games. But but there was that they did kind of place that emphasis on the tools, and I always found that neat. It raised my interest level in firearms for sure.
Totally.
Because otherwise, well, I always kind of was going to be here at Vortex.
Yeah.
So I would have found an interest in them somehow.
Right.
But were it not for that, if I didn't get into hunting or whatever, it would have been just kind of like, okay, they're just another thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's like the customization is huge because it gives people an idea. Like you were saying, you saw what optic was that you saw in one of ours in a video game?
The Spitfire 3X.
And you said it was like pretty accurate.
It
like
is,
as far as
they have the reticle.
It is
I think?
identical. They have the reticle, but it's green. It's in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is like a battle royale.
Well, it's red green in the.
Oh yeah, so they do.
Yeah.
It's only green in there, and the bullet drop, the crosshairs, it actually is accurate. So you can look at the mini map and say, okay, this guy is 300 yards away. I'm going to use this, hash mark.
Oh, seriously?
And I'm going to hold over, and you'll shoot. Bullet drop will drop exactly how you'd expect for the
That's
most
so
part.
crazy.
Obviously, it's not perfect, but it's pretty accurate.
Well, and that's insane because like so many like in Medal of Honor Rising Sun, like you'd be on if you're doing the team deathmatch or whatever.
I know you're gonna say.
Yeah, you could be on that stage where you're on the battleship and you're like forever away from someone. They're on the very opposite side, and you take the well rod. You just hold dead on. You smoke the guy.
Dead on. Yeah.
But like in that one, that's actually accurate to real world.
Yeah.
So somebody theoretically, if they had an understanding of that optic and how it's used in the game, they could slap that on their AR, and assuming that it's like zeroed and everything, they would at least know how to use that. And that it never touched a gun,
And to take it a step further, you can even change your zero in that game.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, so if you were using some super long distance, you could zero at 200 or 300 or something like that too.
Yeah, I remember when I would play another game that I got was Battlefield, and you could switch your zero because they actually had some sort of like a ballistics, a quasi-ballistics thing going on there. I don't know how accurate or inaccurate it was. But I did think it was funny. You just like push a button, all of a sudden it was like click, your zero changed. And it was like, whoa, nothing happened there. Nobody dialed any turrets. It was just kind of like magic.
Yeah.
And one thing that's cool for me is, I've been playing video games for 28 years or whatever, and to see how they've changed with, the realism and different things like that, where you'll get shot in the leg and you'll move slower because of that. Or
do they seriously do that now?
Certain ones will have that feature, and then certain ones also they have specific ammo for the gun that you pick up. So if you pick up something that's 7.62, you can only use that, or 5.56. So it's just getting so much more advanced, and you can get grip, you can get stocks, you can do all sorts of different customization that 10, 15 years ago wasn't even possible. They'd maybe give you like a paint color or something to choose from, but it's just moved way more advanced now. And now they have hardcore simulators where those are incredibly detailed with the amount of the work and equations that they put into it. So it's really cool to see those.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Jameson. As somebody who's been playing for a while, what kind of games do you think are more fun? Because we've done, for example, a classic, if you watch our Instagram story, we've done GoldenEye, for example. Now, I think the only thing that probably GoldenEye got semi-accurate is the fact that you eventually have to reload. Other than that, it was just kind of hip shooting a bunch of dudes who would come around a door. Whereas today, there's all these realistic aspects to it. Is that more fun, or is it more kind of like an annoyance, like to when you're trying to... because is the point now, is it starting to become the point that you actually want to play soldier, or is it still the point where it's like, I just kind of want to have like a mindless activity to...
I think it's a little bit of both, and there really is a video game for whatever you're looking for now. But there are some games that do a good job of meshing the two, where it's still kind of arcadey. Like you look at arcade versus a simulation. There are some where it's just like, Fortnite, there's no realism to it at all. People run, pick it up for 30 minutes, and they're done with it. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where you got to count every bullet. There's no heads-up display on your screen, so if you're not counting your bullets and you just run out of ammo, you got to remember to reload.
Oh, it doesn't tell you all that stuff.
No
on
information,
the corners.
Nothing like that. No mini map. And to me, those, I'm just not as good at those. Those require a lot more patience, a lot more time. I like that middle ground where it's a little bit of both. You still have to focus on what's real and what isn't. But it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that has been kind of an odd thing, because I remember as I grew up, I found that games started muddying those two, where I wouldn't want to play like Modern Warfare 2. I had zero. Did they even have a campaign? If they did, I didn't even care about it because it was just kind of like, oh, run to this tree. A bunch of guys jump out, shoot those guys. Run to the next thing. A bunch of guys jump out, shoot those guys quick. And then it was like, oh, here's your chance. You get to drive like a Jeep.
Yep.
But then there was like a very laid out course for you to drive a Jeep. And then it was like, okay, you're done. Get out now. You know, and it just seemed kind of like they were trying to make it real, but it was super staged. And
so it's interesting you say like Modern Warfare 2, if they even had a campaign. We'll touch on this in a little bit, I'm sure, but there's an iconic campaign mission in that where you get off or go to an airport as a Russian spy, and it actually asks you before the mission, like, this is graphic, do you want to skip it or not?
Oh.
And you just mow like everything down. But yeah, they've really muddied the lines, and I even look at like racing in the sims that you like. I mean, you can go with your Mario Kart style, or you can go Gran Turismo, Forza, where it's like they'll let you change drive, train, everything that I don't know about. And those I was way in over my head, but those were always fun.
It was Nissan who partnered with Forza, and they partnered with them to actually, because their racing simulator for that racing game was so realistic, or at least claimed to be so realistic, Nissan opened up a something academy or something challenge or whatever, where the best racers in the game who opted into this thing got a chance to go to then a real live racing school and test out there. Like, these are people who had never been behind the car, behind the wheel of a car, probably other than their like rusty Honda Civic that was sitting in their driveway. And now they're driving they were driving 370Zs and like the GTR and stuff like that. And in that case, then the top drivers within that school or that challenge or whatever actually became Le Mans drivers for Nissan.
That's
now,
cool.
If anybody is a car person, they would know that program wound up failing miserably because Nissan built a terrible car. It was a front-wheel drive, front-engine Le Mans car where everybody else was driving rear-engine, rear-wheel drive. It was a mess. The cars didn't do well. They came out for the 24 hours of Le Mans. One of their cars just sat in the bay for like the first hour of the race, which basically means that you're screwed. And I don't think they did that great. But they were actually they were laughed at, but at the same time, they were driving cars that go well over 200 miles per hour on a track.
Cow.
These people were driving these vehicles, and they came out of just playing video games.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That is nuts.
It kind of like, now, of course, my mind is sparked, and I'm sure that people are going to be like just tearing their shirts off and beating their chests and yelling at their radios if I say this, but like, will the military ever use video games as like a recruiting device in a similar way where it's like, now, I'm not, again, I'll say like the Nissan thing, it kind of blew up in their face. And I don't know if it was the driver's fault or if it was the engineer's fault who built this kind of oddball race car.
Yeah.
But would video games ever become so similar to real life where it's kind of like, hey, this person is a really good video game player. I mean, they might be horribly out of shape. I don't know. But, you know, it's like,
so there's two ways in which I do think it'll happen. Obviously, the easy one is like virtual reality, and they actually have these. Some company built a facility where you're on kind of these roller tracks, and you can actually run, and it will track your movements. And then you have the VR headset on, and you're holding a real weighted rifle.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no ammo or bolt in it or anything, and that's super cool. And I think as we progress, that will get something or become something that the military would use for training purposes.
So people right now are doing it to test the technology or for fun.
Yes. I think we're probably still a decade or two away from it ever being anything. But the other aspect that I think we'll definitely start using, if not already, is for drones and how they're flying drones around. That's all remote control anyways. And so if you could do a simulation of that, I mean, you're just kind of cutting out the actual $50 million drone that's flying around. So I think it'll become...
Well, and even now, people who control the drones overseas, a lot of them control them from over here on the state side.
Yep.
And they can just control a plane that's over there.
And those drones are huge. If you've never seen them in real life, they're massive. Yeah.
They're so much bigger than the pictures make them seem. The first time I think there are small ones that are like a individual soldier can carry and like put out in the field.
Right.
But I remember like the first time I saw pictures of it, I was like, that thing looks like it's made out of cardboard. Like I'm sure I could go kick it over.
And then you see someone standing next to it, and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like 20 times the size of them.
They're freaky, man.
Yeah.
I don't like big machines that are controlled by little buttons.
Windmills.
Windmills freak me out.
Yep.
Also, what are the things that look into space the
Telescope.
the telescopes, but there's the domes.
Oh.
Those things with the big giant opening
Oh.
roofs that have the giant telescope. I sound like an idiot right now.
Observation bay.
Yeah,
towers.
it's like an
Sure.
observation
Observatory, something like that. Those big giant opening roofs freak me out so much because they're this massive thing that's controlled by like a tiny button.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think it's weird. I also hate driving by cranes.
Really?
Yeah.
Like sandhill cranes?
No, I love driving by sandhill cranes because I get the idea that maybe someday in Wisconsin we'll be able to
Hey,
hunt
that's true.
some
Ribeyes-
those are ribeye of the
ribeyes of
skies.
the
Yeah.
sky,
Yeah.
yeah.
Back to guns
Yes.
and video games. Now, I'm sure we'd be remiss to have a podcast like this, and I almost want to get it out of the way sooner than
Right.
later because, you know, people are probably thinking there's certainly people out there who think video games are bad, think the video games are stupid. You see it all the time. People comment like, "Wow, I don't ever play those Sally games. You know, I actually go out and I shoot real guns." You know, okay, cool. That's sweet. I dig shooting real guns too. But there are some negatives that come from video games with firearms in them, right? So, I mean, first one that we kind of alluded to earlier is a lot of the inaccuracies of it. Now, I'd be curious who's starting to almost like consult for video game companies now, because like you said, Jameson, they are starting to throw in things where, like getting the right ammo, not just general ammo on the ground from any firearm can go into any other firearm, like they're starting to get that right. Or, other certain attributes of the game and how things work. But there's always going to be those inaccuracies. And how many times have you dealt with somebody, for example, they're asking a question on social media to one of you guys, and you kind of start wondering, you're like, I wonder how much of the reason they're asking this question, or like the reason they have this theory, is from a video game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some of those things that people have to deal with. I mean, like what kind of stuff do you get? What do you think about that?
Like what kind of questions do we get, or how do we feel about the inaccuracies?
The inaccuracies, I guess.
I think they're both good and bad. I think if it was, everyone's just always looking for inaccuracies now. In TV shows and anything, it's like people's goal is to look for mistakes and inaccuracies. And
That's true.
it's like I get it and everything, but at the end of the day, it's a video game. It's supposed to be fun. If it was supposed to be hyper realistic for, say, a military sim, well, they're going to spend the time to make sure those inaccuracies don't exist. But you even start. So one of the big ones was like Battlefield recently had some characters that you could play that weren't historically accurate for World War II. It was a female. You could play a female soldier.
Oh.
And so a lot of people were freaking out about that being a playable character, but it's just because people just want to play and pick the character they want and have fun. But that kind of came a hot button topic. And then when you start applying it to the firearms and things like that, it is really difficult to get it completely accurate. There's no way I think I could ever do something like that.
Yeah. And then you wonder to those people that are complaining about how inaccurate it is. It's like, well, aren't you just satisfied shooting real guns then? Like, if you know so well what is accurate, you likely shoot regular guns. So it's like, I guess they're just mad that other people don't know, haven't experienced what they've experienced.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of like, I never really got that kind of a mindset, because there's always like the people, for example, where it's like, somebody who doesn't hunt a lot. You go over to their house and it's like they cook a mean steak. It's like great ribeyes. And they come out and like, oh, well, let me tell you what, you haven't had a venison backstrap. And it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess I haven't, but I just made a mean ribeye. Like, it tastes good to me, where it's like, yeah, I guess you can be upset at the rest of the world because the rest of the world doesn't have the same hobbies and things that you do. But does that make them bad or stupid?
Well, and the other thing to that, too, is if the inaccuracies really bother you that much, don't play the game.
Right.
Nobody's telling you to. You don't have to buy it and play it. Yeah, go to the range. Have fun with it. Save your $60, buy some ammo, and go shoot.
Yeah, and like you said, there's literally a game out there for like every
skill
level. Like you can find what you want. Like if you want one that's historically accurate and like magazine capacities, like whatever, like you can find that. But the point of it is to be fun. You're doing it to be entertained. It's like social media. Like you go on social media, scroll through to like be entertained and enjoy yourself. If everything you read was like buttoned up, perfect information, social media I don't think would be as popular,
That's a good point.
Like there's like that curve. Like everyone starts somewhere. And if it takes like something maybe a little bit more unrealistic to get someone like interested in it, and then they go through those stages as like whether that's video games or whether that's like real life. Like think about someone who picks up a full auto airsoft gun for the first time,
Right.
And then they eventually buy like a pellet rifle and shoot a 22, and then before you know it, they've gone through all the stages, and now they're shooting, a regular AR-15 that they built. Same thing as like video games, it might start out with what's not the most realistic thing out there, but then you go through those stages of you as a user, and now you can equate that to like actual guns, actual firearms. Now they at least have an awareness of it, and whether they decide to buy a gun and shoot or not, at least they can respect and understand what the firearm is.
Right. So. Yeah. I think really getting your hands on a real firearm at some point or another will help you appreciate both things more.
Yeah.
It helps you appreciate, I know for me, it's helped me appreciate the video games more. And it's helped me appreciate the real firearms more. I played shoot 'em up video games and stuff far before I started shooting real firearms.
Yeah.
And when I started shooting real firearms, I gained a better appreciation and respect for both of them.
It is so much harder than just pulling the right trigger on your Xbox controller. And it's, everything. It's heavier. It's more physical. It's mentally tougher. It's like, holy cow.
Yeah, when you're in the video game, it's like you hold down the one button and your guy on the screen goes... And then all of a sudden, it's like nothing moves, and the crosshairs are perfect. And when you pull the trigger, there's no flinch, and there's nothing. Like you don't pull the trigger off or the crosshairs off the target. And like I also gained. I thought it was funny too. Like the first time I held an AR-15, I remember that I built my first AR-15 with my brother Dave. He's been on the podcast here a couple times. I actually got a bunch of the parts for my birthday, and it was like. I turned 18. I got a bunch of the parts. We went down to the basement and built it on that very birthday. And I remember holding it, and it was both really cool and kind of disappointing. Not gonna lie, at the same time, because I held it, and it was sort of like finding Bigfoot, if you will. Okay, so bear with me for a second. I love the theory of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it, and I want Bigfoot to be real in the worst way possible. And I know that a bunch of people think it's stupid, but I don't care. Because the mystery of it is exciting. The mystery of, like, maybe if I go into the woods somewhere in the PNW, I might stumble across this giant 8-foot ape that's been living out there, unseen for thousands of years. I love the idea of that. But if I ever found Bigfoot, it would ruin the whole thing.
Yeah.
And because then what mystery do I have left that's exciting in my life? So, like I said, in some ways I had that level of disappointment because it was like playing video games. You're grabbing the M4s. You're grabbing the Scar 17. Next thing you know, some guy that you got, has an AK-47. You pick that up off the ground. You're shooting the Vectors. You're shooting the UMP 45s. It's like you're shooting all this cool stuff, right? And it's always kind of like this pie in the sky. This is the stuff the soldiers and awesome people like that use. And then all of a sudden, I was holding a real AR, and I was like, well, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the pinnacle. Like, I've reached it. There's nothing... I guess, now I've seen a Scar 17 now in real life too. And that was another one of those things where it was like, well, now I've seen it. I guess that's not like a dreamy thing that I can maybe it's like it's done. The journey of eventually seeing and holding and feeling and shooting a Scar 17, an AR-15. Chris Vector is now gone. And so, but at the same time, it is fulfilling because you're like, wow, this is the thing that I've been playing video games. This is like the thing that I've idolized.
Well, that was one of the coolest things, too, is using the Vector, using, the UMP 45 and all those things, and then actually holding one in your hand.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, my gosh, this is the gun that I always used. Like, Scar 17 is one of them. That is, like, the best when it comes to video games because there's no recoil. It just shot straight all the time. Super badass. And then to actually see one, you're just like, oh, my gosh. This is amazing.
Yep.
Like, all right, I've reached my pinnacle.
Yeah. They're always smaller in person for some reason, too. Like, the first time I saw a Scar 17, I was like, oh, it's actually not that big.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's a big gun, don't get me wrong, but it's not as big as I thought.
The other thing too there is like as a society we're like a very curious society. Like people want to like learn things that like DIY stuff, anything DIY on the internet is like huge, whether that's guns or not. So like even if, like to the naysayers that might think like guns in video games is just like brainwash and poo-hooing that.
Yeah.
Like to those people I would say like even if the gun in a video game just got the person to like go into like a retail store and at least like look at it, whether they bought it or not, or never decided to fire a gun their entire life, I think that's a win for like the firearm industry. It's a win for video games. It's a win for everyone because now that person has a respect for like what it is that they're seeing in their digital experience, and now they're bringing that into their real world, whether they buy it or not. They at least have that respect for it. And I don't know. I think I would venture to say that's a win for everyone.
Yeah.
So.
And I've seen it many times too, of course, where you have somebody who's kind of grown up not anywhere around real guns, but they've seen them on TV, they've seen them in video games and stuff, and then all of a sudden they're given one or they buy one or they're somebody hands them one at the range and you can tell that they're going to need a little hand holding.
Yeah.
So that nobody gets hurt. And that's one of those things. That's where you start to get into some of it depends on the person, right? Because I know some people, like, for example, Jameson, when Jameson came here, and he hadn't been into, like, real firearms necessarily prior to working at Vortex, at least I know, I could tell that he has the emotional and just sort of, like, common sense knowledge that when we took him out to the range, he wasn't going to be like, wow, this is super cool, guys, and just flag and sweep everybody on the range. But it was good for us to be there because we were helping him figure out, like, how to actually, because, when you're in a video game, you're holding a controller in your hands, whereas, the guy on the screen is the one who's shouldering it, who's, holding it right and gripping the forend right and all that stuff. So, we were working on that. And you wound up now shooting a full 3-gun match, which involved an AR-15, a shotgun, and a pistol, and you did quite well at it. Didn't get last.
Yep, and now I own one of each. I own my own pistol, my own shotgun.
Didn't DQ either.
Didn't DQ like Eric. Either. So it's going well.
Exactly, didn't DQ like Eric, who has been around guns since he was a tadpole. But you like I said, it depends on the person, and you hope that those people out there that might not really truly understand the full scope of what they're doing when they hold a real firearm, you hope that somebody in their life is going to be there with them to teach them the ropes, and hopefully in a way that doesn't just sour them on the thing forever, because there's always the people who are like, give me that, you're doing it, you look like an idiot, and great job recruiting people to be firearms enthusiasts, right. If you're that kind of person, but yeah, you hope that when there's those people that somehow somebody is there for them, or they have the common sense perhaps to take a class or something, because that's where I think the gun video games can start to, they make somebody excited about firearms, right? And it's just that somebody has to have the proper outlet for that excitement, right? In a respectable manner, and responsible. That was the word. A responsible manner, so that they don't wind up hurting themselves or other people, which right. It's hard to say which one's worse, because obviously they hurt themselves. That's bad. But I think that when other people become a victim of somebody else's choices, that's just even worse.
Yeah.
But I've always thought the same thing, because I've mentioned, like I said, I used to play the racing games, and I remember the first racing game was the Underground game that I saw before the game started. They had a warning where it was like,
drive around a closed course.
Drive like this in the video games. Don't drive like this on the street. And I was like, oh, it's kind of sad that we have to put that in a video game, right. Because it's like, I know I'm not going to go 170 miles an hour, no brakes, and then rip a 90-degree left turn because the physics in this game are so jacked up, But I guess other people don't know that.
Yeah.
And that's scary because, then, I mean, if I'll be honest with you, like, as far as a car goes, if somebody plays a video game, they play Need for Speed, and they think that they can go 170 and do a turn and not have to brake or lift or do anything, and they crash and they roll into a tree or whatever and hurt themselves, it sounds terrible, but I'm kind of like, you should have known, like that's kind of on you. But if they do it and they roll into a minivan with a mom and 3 kids, then I'm...
And I think, like you said, in whether it's racing or, like Call of Duty or something like that, it's really the person. I mean, I don't think the racing game or the shooting game is the catalyst for them being irresponsible. Yeah. It's the person prior to even playing it, just being an irresponsible person.
Like, I forget what, there's a I think it might have been Columbine that they like somehow tied that back to Doom, like the video
those
game.
kids played a lot of Doom.
Yeah.
and they did. So the biggest one too, video game that kind of came under fire for just being able to do whatever you want was Grand Theft Auto 3. It was the first 3D video game where you could literally do whatever you want. I mean, you could go
anything goes,
pick up a prostitute, and you could do whatever with them, or you could shoot them and drive off, hide behind a dumpster. Your wanted stars would go away, and nothing would happen. And it kind of created this.
You get killed, you just hit restart.
Right, and it created this narrative with the media that the video games are what is brainwashing kids to do bad things.
Right.
And you could apply that to pretty much anything, movies, television, anything. And again, I go back to it's the person much before that, and it's. I don't think it's the video game's fault, but of course the media wants someone to attack, and they're going to choose the easiest option.
Yeah. Well, and the other option, of course, is the actual firearm too.
Yeah.
Right.
Which so many people blame, and it's like, I mean, how many times have you seen somebody out there and it's a correct frame of mind where it's like you set a gun on the table, and it's like, that gun's not killing anybody.
Right.
It takes a brain and a finger on the trigger to do bad things, or to do perfectly fine things too, and ultimately, I think that brain is the biggest thing, and each person has a brain. They use how they choose to use it is up to them, or whatever. And so you hope that again, like I said, that if somebody is playing these games or something like that, and they do then become interested in the firearms, that somebody is there in their life to help them do it in a responsible manner, or that they have. Or that they have the kind of fortitude or whatever, the mental fortitude to actually think to maybe take a class first, which there are many.
Yeah, there
are. You don't have to take like some full-on carbine class, though. I think if you're actually interested in video games, you'd probably enjoy one of the many courses that are around the country. You got people like Magpul Corps who tours the country, and they have different courses. But then you also there's a lot of local shooting ranges and clubs where they'll do classes and things. Or you can go to some competitions like Jameson, as a video game player, a lot of times in video games, you're doing run and gun style stuff, right? Mm-hmm. When you did a 3-gun match, like compare when you actually ran and gun, and I was trying to do it in past tense. When you ran and gunned, dang it.
Wow, that is tough.
Run and gunned.
When you run and gun, we'll just say that. It's just run and gun is one word. We're going to add an ED on the end. Okay. When you run and gun through that Texas course, the Shooter Stores 3-gun match, which is kind of unique because it's a terrain match, and there's you're running through the woods and stuff.
Yeah.
Compare that back to like a video game. What were your emotions compared to when you're playing a video game, running and shooting around?
I mean, it was actually pretty similar in that you kind of had your plan of attack. So how am I going to go through this stage? How am I going to go through this level and do it? And then the adrenaline was pumping way more at Shooter Source, obviously. I mean, you get the feeling, you get, everything, the smells even. Everything is there. And you notice the gunpowder. It's a lot different than when you're sitting on your couch just running through some level that's generated. But
gunpowder in video games, to me, smells like chili cheese Fritos.
Yes, exactly.
And Mountain Dew.
Yep. and sweaty kids who haven't showered in a while. But there were definitely some similarities, if I could talk, between the two of them. But I mean, there's no way to match when you're actually out there shooting in the 3-gun. Like it's just one of a kind.
I think that adrenaline rush that you talked about is a really good point, because even for myself, and I think this is can be equated to anything. Like your first time driving a car, you've driven vehicles in video games for years or whatever.
Yeah.
First time you get behind a wheel, there's feelings there, there's bumps, there's there's stuff that you're taking into account, and
you remember the first time you pushed on the accelerator?
It's like the craziest thing.
Please tell me I'm not the only person to have pushed on the accelerator and thought that it was either off or all the way on, and then all of a sudden you just got whiplash because you're like, whoa, that's
Well, I didn't think there was any pressure sensitivity on it. I thought, it's either on the metal, pedal to the metal, or just not touching it. Because in the video games, you're either slamming down the R trigger.
There's no halfway.
No, you don't do that. I remember my poor mom when I was in my learner's permit stage, just getting her head rocked back and forth because now just give it a little. Oh no, little get. Okay, now you're not on the. Okay, get a little. Okay, yep.
My mom would hold the little bar.
The oak bar.
Yeah,
right.
the oak bar. The whole time it's like, Mom, you're really not doing anything for my confidence by holding that now.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that all that adrenaline stuff is like even, when I shot my first 3-gun match last year too, like, I mean, I've been around guns for a long time, but like when I was running through the course at the Hornady's Zombies in the Heartland shoot or whatever, I was like you had the adrenaline rush that you would get after like a sports event or like anything that like took you out of your element. And like shooting a video game or shooting a gun in a video game is sweet. Like you see the gun go off or whatever, but you don't smell the gunpowder. You don't feel the recoil.
Oh, right.
You don't like feel the weight of the gun in your hand. It's a totally different experience.
And there's a reset button in video games.
Yeah,
there is.
Not at a shooting
if you get
3-gun shooter source or something like that. You have your 10 stages. You screw up or you get DQ'd, you're done.
You're done. Exactly. Yeah. I did have some adrenaline moments in video games, like when you're on a kill streak in Call of Duty. You want to get that. You want to drop the nuke.
Yep.
I never dropped a nuke in Call of Duty.
I never did
I've
either.
gotten a few of those
Really?
in my time.
Did you seriously?
That was 25
Nerd.
straight kills, not counting kill streaks. So
Nerd.
I've been there. It's
Wow.
the best.
Oh, man.
If I could have a 1-to-1 like kill death ratio in Call of Duty, I was doing good.
We used to always sit there
and
and
I was very poor at
Yeah.
shooting the 1-to-1.
I wouldn't let my friends play on my account because I didn't want to
Dude,
lose
my
my
roommate
KD
did that to
ratio.
me,
And
yeah.
it's like, dude, I'm at like 2.1 right now. Just don't even touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to strangle my friend, which probably goes into, well, the video games are teaching you violence. He was my best friend, and I didn't actually want to strangle him. But I did, because I went all the way up to level 70 in Call of Duty, and he was like, dude, you got a prestige. It's super awesome, man. You'll get like another class of weapons that you can like load out ahead of time so it saves you time. And I was just like, no, I'm at level 70. I have every gun, every accessory, every pistol, every whatever unlocked. I was like, I am done. I'm not going to go back to level 1 and prestige. And one time, then we were playing. I went to the bathroom. When I came back, I was like, "Where are all my things?" And I was like, "Why does it say I'm level 1 again?" He's like, "Oh, I prestiged you."
Oh, man.
Like, no.
Oh, man.
But-
Devastating.
But speaking of prestige and that word, one other thing that I think is really important as well with then transitioning from the video games to the real guns is that it's important for people to be humbled.
Mm-hmm.
And when you actually go to shoot a real gun, it's
Yep.
a very humbling experience, especially when you are somebody with this prestige status, or whatever, and you're poning noobs and like, oh, don't use the noob tube, it's cheating, you're such a noob. And then all of a sudden that person goes out and it's like, hey, here, hold this. And they're like, whoa, an AR-15 is actually kind of heavy. And, like, oh, wow, I actually have to hold it steady myself and pull the trigger the right way. And I'm missing a lot. And now I'm really nervous because people are watching me and I look bad and I don't know how to do this. And so it's like, if I'm ever going to like move and shoot, I'm moving really slowly. And, I have to reload a magazine so I don't have sleight of hand pro. So I can't like, reload it in 2 point, whatever, or like 0.2
blink
seconds.
of an eye.
Yeah. All the, and you can't run up to a rubber dummy and just all of a sudden grab a knife out of thin air and just, and then it's instantly dead.
And I'll be honest, that was me. I mean, I was, don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I was pretty good at video games. Like I was always one of the better ones of my friends, reaching the max level in Halo 2
You had the
and all
nuke.
That. I got the nuke a few
If you got
times.
to nuke level, you were pretty
Right,
good.
so I'm thinking here I'm good. I'll just be able to come into the shooting world, real life shooting, and be okay. And it was way harder than I thought it would be. And to your point, like you can't run through a stage and then just like not be tired and hold a joystick and hold your breath and everything stays stationary. It's like no, when I was running through the stages in 3-gun, I was out of breath. I could barely keep my reticle on the target, and just like wow. Definitely put me in my place. It's like, sure, you can be good at video games, but it's an entirely different world when you actually take it into real life.
The cool thing about that, though, is like you saw at the shooter source, the shooting community is so like they want you to feel comfortable. They want to help you out. Like the amount of people like giving you tips, and like same thing for people who are listening that like might be on the fence whether or not this is something that they're going to get involved in. Like they can come to like for example, we had the Hunter Sighting event here at Vortex where people came to the range and shot, and like there were people shooting stuff that like wasn't doing well or whatever, and you get like instant feedback from people that are like everyone in this lifestyle wants more people a part of it, and I think like that's what you would say that you saw
absolutely
at the shooter source. So
and this industry has benefited, I think, greatly from firearm enthusiasts And you look at the number of people out there now who in recent years you had, certain people in politics that some people dubbed the greatest gun salesman or people in history, or whatever. And there's been a lot of people buying firearms lately. And a lot of those people were first-time firearm buyers. And it wasn't that all of a sudden a giant portion of the population turned 18 and could go get a firearm. It was that a lot of people had always been interested in them. Probably had seen them in movies and in video games and on TV and stuff. And then came this time, and I'm not, what's the word? I'm not promoting or saying that I think it's really good that there's like gun scares and stuff, which I think there's always the misconception that's like, well, I'm sure everybody at Vortex loves when there's a gun scare.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, okay, if we're real short-term thinkers, yeah, sure, great. Gun scares are awesome, but the next thing you know, it's like 2 years you're out of business. So, no, I don't love them, but, it did happen where a lot of people kind of started getting firearms. And then you just start seeing now the culture of firearms has blossomed like tremendously. Look back to when we first started Vortex. Like if somebody would have said that you were ever going to have rifle scopes, not only just have rifle scopes, but have them be the biggest portion of your business, like bigger than binoculars and spotting scopes and rangefinders combined, we would have just laughed.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have been rolling, And then now only like 15... I'm terrible at math on the spot. 16 years later. 17 years later.
Proof.
Give or take.
Somewhere in there. Neighborhood. There you have it, So it's like that all happened so quickly. And so you have people that are now taking more ownership over the firearm culture and promoting Second Amendment rights. Now they have a stake in the game because they have an AR-15 and they're safe or whatever. And you also have too. Let's talk. I mean, we can of course bring up the hunter thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that there's plenty of outdoorsmen out there and people who never like to spend more than an hour inside or whatever because I want to be out in the mountains. I want to be hunting. I want to be doing this. Like super cool. I respect the heck out of that lifestyle. And it's like in many ways though, you probably have a lot of just people who think guns are awesome and bought them, just to be able to shoot them or just to have them or just to collect them. You should be thanking them too, right?
Totally. 100%.
Because there's, you have the Pittman Robertson, am I right with the name on that?
Yep.
Which states, there's a tax on every single item related to those items. Maybe not.
No, yeah, you're right.
Is it everything related to a firearm?
Yeah, it's guns, it's ammo. Ammo is the huge one. That's why that's why I think this is even a topic all in of itself because as a hunter, like speaking of myself here personally, like I might shoot a box of ammo to sight in my 270 before deer season, maybe. Then it's sighted in, So that box of ammo that I just bought, a little bit of that funding went back into what I love to do. But I think, every hunter has a shooter to thank for a lot of, the Pittman Robertson funding. Because I look at a guy like Ruben who's, shooting I don't even
thousands.
I can't even put a number on it. Like how much he's shooting, He is doing way more for PR contributions than I am, and that's I don't know. That's why I think that's a really cool topic in and of itself because the shooting community or the hunting community is very heavily funded by shooters and we're on the same team there. So yeah, it's huge, very big. But that's the other thing too. If you're, wondering how to get into this, you don't, and you're looking at buying a gun, buying ammo is this big, insurmountable task. I guarantee, people listening to this could go and just ask their neighbor who, has
they'd love to take them out.
Yeah. Buy their ammo for the day if that's it. It's $10 and you just, learned a new
Everybody gets
skill.
excited about that kind of stuff when they see somebody else interested in the same stuff.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, if your neighbor has guns and the kind of people with boarded up windows and a beware of dog sign, and 5 Rottweilers outside that are always barking at you and snarling. I mean, don't go up to that guy's house and ask him to borrow his gun. But
find a different neighbor.
But to
consider moving,
go into to get people into hunting and to get people into shooting. One thing I want to say is, back when I was growing up, there was Big Game Hunter would come out on the system
phenomenal
N64, all of those all the time, and those have really fallen by the wayside. In recent years, there's another one called The Hunter Call of the Wild. It's not nearly as good, and I think that is something that developers should look into in
Yeah.
terms of recruiting. Because if you can get a kid playing that, from a young age, kind of learning the ins and outs of hunting,
Yep.
tracking,
Totally.
sense, all of that stuff, it's just a great way to segue.
Yeah.
People who maybe couldn't afford it at first, but they're like, wow, I really enjoyed that experience in the game. Eric, could I come out hunting with you, even if I just kind of tail you?
Yep.
Everything that I'm interested in now, oddly enough, as an adult, I had a video game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love cars, and it's because my brother got me playing Need for Speed, Hot Pursuit 2, and Need for Speed, Porsche Unleashed. He got me playing those on PC with a joystick, by the way. We had a joystick. It was sweet.
Wow.
Yeah, it was legit. He got me playing those when I was like 6 or 7. And I played those like all nonstop. And now I'm a huge car fan, and it's like I played the Medal of Honors, the Call of Duties, the Battlefields. I played Army Men, great game.
Yeah. Yep.
And like I always thought firearms were cool, and I've gotten into those. I'm trying to think of like what else. I mean, I played Madden all the time, and I wound up playing football in high school, or just getting into sports and stuff. And that was a way for me to like connect with my brother too, who played football in college, and yeah, it's like all those video games. I got into those things in real life.
Yeah.
Almost like a root of your current hobbies was video games back in the day.
And it's crazy, like the Madden thing. Like back when I was playing Madden, I could name like the third string backup long snapper on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I could do it. And now, like since I've been removed from, like I don't play Madden anymore. There's people on the Packers that I couldn't even name.
Right.
So like it gives you so much. Like it actually does teach you stuff. Whether it's Madden or the shooting community.
Or Call of Duty. Yeah. I mean, going back to what you talked about earlier, historical video games and just all sorts of even new ones. I mean, you learn so much that you would have not picked up a textbook and started to read about. It's another way of teaching you different things in a way that can be more engaging and hold your interest. Because if you would have asked me when I was in 5th grade to read a history book on, XYZ, I would have been like, no, thanks, man. I'm good. And then if you gave me a video game and said, this is going to teach you it all and you're going to have a lot of fun doing it, I'd be like, all right, sign me up.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of what got me into history. I would have done history major if I just would have done it, but I didn't because of video games and World War II and World War I. All of that stuff is super fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be really curious if in I don't know, a decade or whatever, if a lot of these like state agencies or whatever, that are recruiting hunters and shooters and stuff, if they're going to start adopting video games like virtual reality or something, because like it's. Right now they have like learn to hunt, learn to fish classes, stuff like that. I'd be really curious if they start adopting virtual reality or video games of some sort to start getting more people involved.
Yeah. I'm going to do something really weird here on the Vortex podcast, and I'm actually going to bring up a competitor, and it is Aimpoint.
Yeah.
And I was walking around at SHOT Show in Las Vegas, and they had a really cool display in their booth where you would get up on a platform and you put on a VR set of goggles, and they had a TV, or maybe it was all like everything that they were seeing was in the goggles. I don't remember how it worked, but everything they were seeing was in the goggles, but there was a TV outside showing everybody behind them what they were looking at. And then they had in the game loaded up their red dots. And then they were on they were hunting hogs or something like that with these things. And so people were VR shooting with their red dots hogs, and you could watch what this person was looking at and doing on this TV next to them. And I mean there's like an example
crazy
of exactly like what you were talking about. It's pretty wild.
It's like it's not perfect, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what it's like to use that red dot in a real life situation.
Yep.
VR though, guys.
That's the future.
What do you think?
I think the military will be using it soon enough, if they're not already.
Yeah, but do you think we're going to turn into the Matrix?
Probably, but I'm okay with that.
Gosh, this is where the nerd aspect comes out.
Ask me red or blue, I'm taking both pills.
Okay.
I'm going to the Matrix.
What would that do?
Have you ever done it?
No.
Neither have I.
Right answer.
All right, well, JMO's spoof of the Matrix is going to come up soon. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about VR because I really don't like the idea of it, and yet it's kind of like the impeding or whatever. It's like the 10-ton giant that you just can't stop. It's like it's happening. People are doing VR. It freaks me out. Makes me think we're going to be in the Matrix, that we're going to need to be unplugged.
Tell you what I'll
what
do.
if we're in the
Yeah.
Matrix right now?
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
What are we doing?
just don't
What
know.
if, yeah.
I'll be buying a VR soon, of course.
Oh.
You never get the first rendition of something in terms of technology when it comes out because there's always bugs with it. So the next one will be coming out soon, and I'm going to get that. I'll bring it in, and your mind will be open.
When you say the next one, what is it? The next one, what? It's just called
So,
VR? Is that
well,
is
no,
that a brand?
there's different manufacturers. The one I'm looking at, HTC Vive, and they'll be making the HTC Vive 2.0
Is
soon.
that the thing where you plug your phone into it and you look like you
No,
got a
this
giant
is much
parasite
different.
on your face?
This one's an actual, you have to hook it up to a computer that has a graphics card and different things to be able to
How
run
big
it.
of a room do you need for this?
Probably the size of this without the table here, so 10 by 10, 8 by 8.
Are you actually going to be running around?
You
or
don't
do
move. Yeah, you use a joystick to do that, but you look around otherwise. But I'll bring it in when I
That's
get
wild.
it, whenever it comes out, and we'll
What's
see
the
what
point
we
of
can
that?
do.
When I played Medal of Honor Rising Sun, I could look around. I just used a joystick
While
to do
turning
it.
your head, though.
No.
Well, there you go. You're
Why do I
fully
need to
immersed.
turn my head.
You can't see anything around you but the...
Just plug your PlayStation into the IMAX. Ask IMAX
That would
Theater
be cool.
if you can borrow.
Rent it out for
That
2
would
hours.
be mind melting.
We might have to do that.
Dude, that would be the hardest thing not to screen peek on the
Yeah.
IMAX.
Right.
Oh my God, yeah.
That would be
can't-
cool.
I can't get behind VR
That's all right.
because
You don't have to.
that's where my mind starts to go into the whole like, okay, at that point, if you're immersing yourself in it that much, just go do it.
That's
But
true.
I also understand that, like, there's the time thing. But
Yep.
Well, think
but
of this. Think of this. Big game hunter.
Yes.
They're doing Alaskan moose hunt.
All right.
How much money would that cost when
Many
I could buy
thousands.
a $400 VR set and a $60 game, and I could feel what it's like to
Ish.
hunt
Yeah.
in Alaska? Yeah. Very,
Ish.
very loose. It's definitely
Right, yeah.
definitely nowhere near what it would actually be.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but
Just tell me that you're also gonna do real things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would never. They are not. One is not a substitute for
Right.
the other. It's just one is kind of
This
a
is just your
intro.
fun thing
Yeah.
to do
Yep.
when you're not doing
Well, it's
real
like after
things.
work. I don't have time to go to Alaska, so I'm just gonna play some
Yeah.
video games where I get to do it.
My goal is that Jameson's going to get this thing. It would just be really interesting to
This
podcast
would be,
about.
yeah.
Jameson's going to get this thing, and then we're going to go on a real Alaskan hunt with Jameson and ask him what he likes better.
Yep.
All right, I'm in. Sign me up.
He's going to shoot like a 60-inch bull moose on VR and then match it in real life.
Yeah,
and
then
it's
we're
gonna be
always
the
going to be like,
most
screw
unbelievable
off,
thing.
go back to your stupid games.
Oh, man.
We'll see.
I don't know. I think VR is going to be like the craziest educational resource out there. But it's like social media, where it's like when it gets abused, then that's where. But that's true of anything.
The day I walk into a because I was just in a restaurant this last weekend where there was some kid, and this kid was in the restaurant with his parents, and his parents, no joke, no, there was food on the table, guys, like, and it wasn't even like everything had been picked over and they were done, just waiting on the check. There was food like fresh out on this table. Kid had his Bose Beats headphones on, or Dre Beats or whatever headphones on, and he was just hunched over in his cell phone. His parents then also had their heads buried in their cell phones.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what they were doing. They were just sitting there. Nobody was talking.
And that is
I
just
was
bad.
I hate
That's
that.
terrible.
Yeah.
That is terrible. And the day that I walk into a restaurant and I see some kid at the dinner table and he's just got a parasite on his face of a VR machine strapped to his head, and he's there and he's, like.
There's a movie on this and a book. It's a book first, and I read it on
What's
the
the
way down.
game?
It's
Or-
Ready Player One.
Yeah.
I listened to the audiobook on the way down to Shooter Source
Yeah.
in
Did
Texas
you?
with you guys. Yeah, it's the only way I could stay awake while driving at like 2 a.m. But that they talk about how like virtual reality with a headset takes over, and
Yeah.
it's super crazy. Like people become
Oh, so
obsessed
it's like
with
the
it.
Matrix, but with VR instead
Exactly.
of like giant spikes
Yep.
in your neck.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it was a really, really good book and movie. And it's like, yeah, there will be a day when we're going to have to make a decision on how we kind of stop or moderate that, because it's already pretty bad. I was at
Right.
Noodles eating dinner, and the kid was doing the same thing. Didn't even talk to his parents once or pick his
God, that's
Just
wild.
And I
awful.
just wanted to go and
What are you
slap
doing?
the phone out of his hand and then
Right?
slap
Just
his parents.
stomp on
too.
it, and then just tell that kid he's a little jerk.
Yep, and his parents. Let
Yeah.
them know as well.
Yeah.
Most of the parents, but also just I want to tell the kid that he's a little jerk.
Yeah. But you gotta
Man,
be
that
careful.
made me that made me think of something else too. We were talking about the Matrix, and then Wall-E could be like Wall-E. That'd be bad.
Yeah.
But we were also Ryan Muckenhern found a little fig plant that was growing inside of a tiny glass bottle,
Oh.
and we determined that if ever the world turns into Wall-E, that the little robot going around would find that little fig plant inside that bottle in its own like little utopia,
And then start it all over again.
Yeah.
and then start it all over.
Yep.
Full circle.
Full circle. What else related to video games? That wasn't the thing, but it did make me think of something. How did fig plants in a bottle make me think of? Who knows? There's a lot of stuff that you could talk to about this stuff, though.
Oh, yeah.
VR and video games and guns. What do you say we dive into last calls? And if anybody feels like there's further topics we should expound or expand upon, then they can hit us up. So we're going to last call this-ish. I'll start, and I'm going to say that, naturally, I feel like one thing that we didn't dive in a ton on, and it's a hard thing to dive in on, but we did kind of get to the root cause of it, is that it depends on the person a great deal.
Yeah.
And if you are a person who's playing video games and you think guns are super awesome and like you want to get into them responsibly, super awesome. I think that's great. And a lot of people are going to point out the fact that video games teach violence, and they teach kids to literally like crave violence or crave, like you get points for for taking lives.
To gamify it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people want to point that out, and I guess I just think to myself, the same thing gets pointed out about firearms, and it's like you can't blame those things. It's in the end, it's up to the person whether or not they're going to decide to do something crazy. And I think that the kind of person who plays a video game and they get an obsessive personality over wanting to go and try and kill people, that if they didn't have video games, something else would make them want to go and do that.
Yep.
Totally,
You have how many
100%.
serial killers in the past have gotten their start because they poached squirrels in their backyard,
Yeah.
and they just got a real weird kick out of it. You know,
Yep.
it's like if it's not video games,
There was
it's gonna be
clearly
something
something
else.
going on
Right,
prior to the
right.
video
Yeah.
games. Yeah.
Which I know is a dark conversation, but it leads me into a quote that I believe, and in fact, Ryan Muckenhern is here because we're going to do a 10-minute talk right after this. He can confirm this. I think it was a Benjamin Franklin quote. And he said, I would rather, and if I may be paraphrasing or I may be getting just the gist of it, but I know it was, I would rather live free and dangerous than safe as a slave.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather live free and
Powerful.
dangerous with
That is.
video games that have firearms in them and
With
war video
firearms
games and World War II awesome Medal of Honors and stuff, than safe as a slave in a community with no gun video games.
Yeah.
That's my last call. Ryan, did I get that? Was that Ben Frank? He's got. All right, sounds good.
All right.
Eric, alphabetical order. You're next.
Yeah.
Even though we totally screwed it up with
Yeah.
you going first.
I guess I've told you guys a story of my buddy who I was deer hunting with that had the AK-47.
Oh yeah. Have you said it on the podcast
I haven't,
though?
so
Go for
have
it.
to. So this guy, this is opening day of gun deer season, probably about 8 years ago. We're walking into the woods, single file line, 8 people, not going to see a deer because we had no idea what we were doing. My buddy has on snowmobile pants that are swishing with every step. He's wearing a orange ski mask with 2 holes cut in the eyes and 1 hole cut in the mouth, holding an AK-47 with a red dot on top. And everyone's on pins and needles. It's opening morning. The sun is just cresting the horizon. Like every sound, you're like on 10, All of a sudden, my buddy Nick turns around. Hey, I feel like Tom Clancy's Advanced Warfighter, Okay, so where I'm going with that is like that guy got into hunting, got into shooting because of video games. And that guy has bought a damn hunting license every year since playing Tom Clancy's Advanced Warfighter.
Because he loved the feeling.
Does
he still use an AK-47?
He still uses an AK-47.
Gotta love it.
So if that's what it takes to get new people involved in it is what we're passionate about, I'm all for it.
At
think
first, I
that's
didn't
sweet.
see where that was going.
No,
but now
I didn't
get it.
either.
Wrapped it around.
Yep.
Yeah, so my last call is this. I'm a huge video game nerd, as we've kind of established already. When I see our optics in video games, it gets me hyped. Like, I can't wait to unlock that, to go pick it up. In fact, I'll kind of ignore all the other optics that they have and just use ours because it's so cool to me.
Good
So
man.
for any of our listeners out there who are listening and play video games as well, if you want to see more video games with our optics or with just anything like that in general, hit us up, let us know, and I'll do my best to see if I can get us in some more video games because it makes me excited, and I'm sure other people would get
I
excited.
thought you were
as
about
well.
to lay down like a serious promise where it was like, I will
Yeah.
get.
I'll do my
Here's
best.
my email.
Yeah,
but we had an I'll do my best in there.
Yeah,
so
I'm
at least-
a under promise over deliver type guy.
All right.
So
Yeah.
I set the bar low and exceed the bar more
That's the
often
way to
than
do
not.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But,
yeah, all about exceeding that bar. All right. Well, on those notes, good last calls. Interesting conversation, a little bit out of the norm of our usual stuff, but we like to keep it fresh. Get Famous Amos cookies. Famous Amos, please sponsor us. Wally Amos. Is that what his name is?
It is Wally. Wally Amos.
Wally
Trademark
Amos.
name.
That is a trademarked name. Please note before anybody with the last name Amos out there
that's the
tries
sound of a cookie.
to name their child Wally, you are likely going to have to relieve custody to Famous Amos cookies
Yep.
of your child. Yep. So thanks, everybody. Happy hunting and shooting out there. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Right.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.